Wait, you want how much for my mailbox to be the wrong color? Yeah, that's what I was thinking, standing there in my kitchen, coffee barely kicked in, when this HOA president, Jessica Turner, shows up at my door demanding $3,000. I wish I was exaggerating. My wife, Julie, just stares at her for a second, then hits her with the coldest no I've ever heard. That was it. Just no. Jessica absolutely loses it, starts waving her clipboard around, ranting about rules, and when that doesn't work, she calls the cops on us. But here's where it gets funny. The officer walks up, takes one look at my wife, and goes completely white. "Judge, you live here?" That was the moment I realized this circus had just run off the rails. Now, let me back up a sec, because you gotta see. And every mailbox costs more than my first car. Tech money, right? It'll get you further than you think if you survive the interviews. But nobody warns you about HOA politics. And Jessica got this Zen thing about her. Calm in a crisis, barely blinks when things go sideways. And here's the kicker. She's a federal judge. Deals with real criminals, not rose bushes and mailboxes. But instead of pulling rank, Julie lets Jessica ramble about violations. 17 violations. $3,000 in fines. Apparently, our roses were the wrong shade of pink. The mailbox is black instead of bronze. And there's a $500 processing fee for daring to exist in Jessica's kingdom. I'm about to say something when our neighbor, Mrs. Collins, who weighs maybe 90 pounds and has lived here since the Eisenhower administration, leans out and whispers, "She destroyed the Morgans like this. Forced them to sell. Then she's gone, like a ghost." So, yeah, it hits me. Jessica's been running this scam for years. Now, Julie doesn't flinch. She asks Jessica to show her the municipal code granting the HOA that kind of power. Not "what did we do," but "show me the law." Jessica's eye twitches. Then Julie asks if the fines were ratified by a majority vote per the Davis-Sterling Act. Jessica just stares, scrambling for words, and stammers about proper procedures. But then she doubles down, threatens to escalate if we don't pay within 48 hours. Julie, being polite as ever, asks for all the documentation. Jessica struts off, thinking she's won. And I see Julie start photographing every piece of paper. That's when I realize she's not just defending us. She's building a case. 3 days later, Jessica is back, this time with a contractor in tow. And now the fines are up to $8,000. Math is funny when you're making it up as you go, I guess. There's talk of liens, late fees, attorney costs, an avalanche of paperwork meant to intimidate. But Julie just smiles, asks for the specific section of the Davis-Sterling Act again, and that's when Tom Rodriguez shows up. Tom's a board member, honest guy, and you could tell he'd had enough. He calls Jessica out, says there's been no board vote, no meeting, and questions her authority to impose late fees at all. Jessica's mask slips for the first time. Julie requests a formal records, evidence. It turns out Jessica's scam is just one branch of a bigger tree. Corrupt city officials, fake code violations, dirty contractors, even cops on the take. Julie's investigation. The good cop. What she doesn't know is Rodriguez has testified in Julie's courtroom before. When he steps onto our porch, sees Julie, he freezes, removes his hat, stammers. "Judge, you live here. Computers, everything." The scam collapses overnight. What started as mailbox drama turned into the biggest public corruption bust this county's seen in 2 decades. Jessica pleads guilty to racketeering and gets 18 years. Morrison gets 12. The stolen money is recovered, victims get restitution, and the neighborhood transforms. People are actually talking to each other. Judge, you don't just get a partner. You get a one-woman wrecking crew for justice. Julie never once flashed her badge or used her title to intimidate. She's simply out-prepared, outsmarted. Scratch, lost in thought. "Doesn't feel real yet, huh?" I said, pulling up a chair beside her. She looked at me, eyes tired but satisfied. "Not quite. You know, the hardest part about cleaning up a mess like this isn't catching the crooks, it's what comes after. Picking up the pieces. Making sure nobody slips through the cracks." And she was right. The news trucks started showing up before ran, who else might have been involved, what the city would do to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. But the part that hit hardest wasn't the media circus. It was the neighbors. People I'd barely exchanged more than a head nod with were suddenly knocking on our door, some just to say thank you, others carrying folders stuffed with paperwork, evidence they'd been too afraid to. Turns out Jessica's web stretched further than anyone realized. One of the contractors who used to do her dirty work, he flipped fast, gave up names, bank accounts, even the name of a city official, who'd been rubber stamping fake code violations for a cut of the profits. Meanwhile, the interim HOA board, now led by Tom, had its hands full. People were furious, but not just at Jessica. Prince, standard stuff. Turns out it wasn't just a leftover from Jessica's crowd. The investigation led to a city inspector, a guy who'd been quietly approving bogus violations for years, pocketing bribes and threats in equal measure. When they brought him in, he sang like a bird. By the end of the month, half a dozen city officials were either indicted or testifying. The community started to heal, but not without scars. Julie? She stayed humble through it all. Never once boasted, never claimed credit, just kept doing what she does. Listening, documenting, pushing for answers. I'm not a hero, she'd say. I just know the law and what happens when nobody's watching. But even she couldn't stop the ripples. Local papers ran exposés, the mayor called for a county-wide review of all HOA activities, and the FBI kept us updated as more arrests rolled in. And every time another neighbor shared their story, every time someone got their stolen money back, Julie's resolve just got stronger. She kept saying, "It's never about one person. It's about making sure nobody else goes through this alone." But here's the part that stuck with me. One night, maybe a month after the takedown, I found Julie sitting on our back porch, looking up at the stars. "Do you think it's really over?" I asked. She just shook her head, half smiling. "Injustice never really ends, Blake. You just keep fighting it, one scam, one bully, one bad law at a time." So yeah, the headlines faded, the news vans left, but something fundamental changed in our neighborhood. People talked more, watched out for each other. Nobody was afraid to ask questions anymore, not about fees, not about rules, not about who was running the show. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Jessica had picked another house, one without a federal judge in the living room and a folder full of receipts on the dining table. Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe she'd still be out there, writing up bogus violations and ruining lives. But she picked us, and she lost. And here's my question for you. If you saw something shady happening in your community, would you step up? And if you want more stories where karma hits like a freight train, hit that like, smash subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Because I guarantee you, there's a Jessica out there in every town, just waiting to learn the hard way what happens when the community fights back.